Welcome to the woods. I'm not sure how long this video's gonna go on for, because although I've got a few notes, it's something I can ramble on about for quite some time. So it might be short, it might be long. We'll see how we go. We'll let the helicopter fly over first. So, before I get into how you can introduce an alternative currency, let's ask a few questions. What is money? More to the point, why is money? And I'm not going to be talking about what is money today or why money is around today, but really, why did money emerge in the first place? What was happening before that? And what was the reason for it? So before money was introduced, most people will know this anyway, but it's worth touching on. Goods and services were exchanged through a system of barter, which is fine, but difficult, because you have to have the goods or services that someone else wants, and they have to have exactly the same thing that you need in order for that barter, for that swap to take place. If you don't, then the marketplace becomes very difficult. So if you've got a chicken and you want a lamp, but the person who's got a lamp doesn't want a chicken, he wants a bag of salt, you could then look for someone else with a lamp, or you will probably look for someone with salt, and hopefully they'll want a chicken. Then you can do that barter, then you can take the salt and go and get your lamp. As you can see, that can go on for quite a long time. So money was introduced as a tool to ease the exchange of goods and services between two parties, be them groups or individuals. So a tool to ease trade. It was also used rapidly, once introduced, as a means of amassing your personal wealth. So you could save money and have a lot of it. You could be more productive and sell more, and therefore have more money. And we can see how that has pushed into the modern day. But today, money is much more a tool to control populations, and the reason that we do less, the reason that things don't get done, is because of money. For example, on an individual basis, you may want to extend your house, but you don't do that because you can't afford it. So it doesn't get done because of the cost and the money involved. And the same goes as you move up into governments. Will see that something needs doing, yet it will not get done because of the cost. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like that, but I'll come on to that later. What I'm going to talk about in the first part of this video, it might actually be in this video, I might split it down into two. So in this first part, I'm going to talk about how you can introduce an alternative currency and how that can be used to benefit a designated group of people or a designated area. And why is that important? Well, two fronts. The first one is, with an alternative currency, you can contain the wealth within that designated group of people or within that designated area. And that can become important if there's a collapse around you. So, this one is really going to touch on a ring-fenced economy. But before I get into it, I understand that there's a lot of people interested in silver or precious metals as an alternative currency. There is an issue with this. Let's take silver, of which I've got a fair bit. Some I've got stacked, some I'm wearing. I don't envisage silver being an alternative currency because it is based on monetary value. So silver for me is a financially sound way to ensure my money retains its worth. So if I buy a kilo of silver, it's likely that that kilo of silver isn't going to dramatically lose its worth, so I can trade it in at a later date for money. So silver is still linked to money. The problem with using that as an alternative currency is silver is still quite expensive to purchase. So if you're going to spend £100 buying £100 worth of silver, it's worth £100. It's still linked to monetary worth. And there will be people out there shouting now that actually silver is at least a hard currency, it's worth something. Well, the argument against that is that actually silver is only worth anything if you need silver. By making a silver goblet or a necklace, then yes, I would need silver and therefore it has intrinsic value to me. But as and of itself, silver has no real intrinsic value. There's very little that does. When money first became introduced, seashells were used, and you could pick them up on the beach, but they were used as coinage. When the first coins were introduced, the coin itself is worth very little and has to be linked to a value, be that a bag of salt or a bushel of corn. So one coin is worth one bushel of corn, and therefore prices can be fixed accordingly within the marketplace. So I don't envisage silver being used as a currency, although it is good to ensure your money retains its worth. So it's worth buying silver because if there's a collapse, then you can trade that in and get your money. So what is a ring-fenced alternative currency? Well, I've touched on this in a previous video, and I'll use the same example and hopefully extrapolate out a little longer to explain it. I want you to imagine an amusement park, something like Disney World. So quite big to start with. And the only currency you can use within this amusement park are tokens. So when you turn up with yourself and maybe your family, and you're going to be there for the day, you give the man £100 and he gives you 100 tokens. And one token is worth £1. The beauty of that for the amusement park is you can only use that token within that amusement park. And you have your day there, and you buy your hot dogs and you spend tokens, and you go on rides and you spend tokens, and you buy a cuddly toy and you buy it with tokens. And halfway through the day, if your kids are with you, you would have run out of tokens and you'll go and buy some more. And you finish your day there and you've got 10 tokens left. And you walk up to the man you bought them from and he says, no, we don't buy tokens back. So you wander off and spend another £10 worth of tokens in that amusement park. And it's the only place you can spend them, so there's no point in taking them home. That's a ring-fenced economy. And just like we mentioned with silver, that token, which is worth nothing, is linked to monetary worth. So it's linked to your pounds that you paid for it. Now the vendors in this amusement park have got a big box full of tokens at the end of the day. And I want you to imagine that this amusement park that started off big got bigger and bigger. And that these vendors, most of them, live in that amusement park. That there's housing estates and there's houses and flats. And to save travelling to work, they live in the amusement park. And at the end of the day, let's say 6 o'clock, it's very dark, isn't it, where that sun's so bright. Sorry about that, but you can hear my voice and that's cool. At the end of the day, at 6 o'clock, Bob gets his big box of tokens and leaves for home. And on his way, he stops at his mate's restaurant in the amusement park because he's hungry and he's had a hard day. And he has a nice meal and he pays for that in tokens because he hasn't changed them back into pounds. And because it's within that amusement park, tokens are accepted. And before he gets home, he stops at a shop. And our shop caters for all the vendors, not the public, but it will also accept tokens. And why not? They have a monetary value. One token is £1. So it'll accept pounds and it'll also accept tokens. And Bob buys some groceries and he pays with tokens and he goes off home. Now, as you can see, that within a relatively short period of time, the vendors within that amusement park that live there and work there start to use more and more tokens and cash them out for pounds less and less. The more things that become available to them within the amusement park. Now, if you go one stage further, you can see that the vendors within that park that already live there would be looking to increase their income. So when people do have to cash their tokens out to buy goods and services that aren't available within the park, any entrepreneurial vendor there is going to spot that actually, if I've got 500 vendors that regularly need a product that they have to purchase from outside, there's an opportunity here for me to do one of two things. The first one is to produce that product myself and sell that to the vendors that need it. Now there's obviously a profit in that product, otherwise it would not be available. Or I could contact a supplier and for a huge bulk order of 500 as opposed to one, receive a discount. And if I was to get, say, a 20% discount, I could pass 10% on to the vendors that regularly buy that product, therefore they're happy, paying 10% less, and I'm happy for making 10% by being the middleman. And the company that supplies the product is happy because it's getting a regular large order. So now you have an alternative currency that is linked to a monetary value that people understand. That is retaining wealth within an area and within a group of people. So that wealth is not going out to the outside, it's staying within that park. It's also encouraging new businesses to flourish, to provide the goods and services that those vendors require. So it's a good system. Now, why would we need a system like that to begin with? Well, if we were to link it to a currency that we all understand, it's easy to communicate. It's easy to price. As prices rise in the real world, they would necessarily rise within the alternative currency. And in the early stages, that's not really an issue. But it is a means whereby a large group of people can start businesses, trade between each other and to customers that wish to trade with them for their goods and services. Where someone with pound notes, I'm really showing my age. If I wish to buy a product from within this ring-fence community, I would need to pay in tokens. So I cash in my £20 and get £20 worth of tokens. I can then buy the product from the vendor within the ring-fenced currency with my tokens. And at the end of the day, they can take those 20 tokens, they can spend them within that ring-fenced currency area, or they can cash them out for money. The more businesses, the more people trading, the more people giving goods and services within that ring-fenced area, the less money leaks out. The only time it goes out is when you cannot get those goods or those services within that ring-fenced area. And that's, again, when the more entrepreneurial amongst us would say, okay, there's a massive need for clothing, there's a need for music, there's a need for graphic design, there's a need for services like an electrician or a plumber or a mechanic, and these things are needed throughout the country. So there's different areas. Not a lot of good if someone's offering a mechanic service in the borderlands between Scotland and England and I'm way down here in the woods, but if there's someone local, I'm quite up for using them. So it's encouraging more people to provide goods and services within that ring-fenced community where that currency can remain. Now there's further things you can do in the early stages when putting together an alternative currency that could just be a stamped token, a stamped coin. Doesn't have to be silver, it could be any alloy. It could be paper money like we use today. It could be digital, right? But it would be controlled by us. That's the difference. So it's encouraging more people to put in goods and services into that ring-fenced area. The ring-fenced area would grow and grow and grow as the more businesses come on board and more people providing goods and services, the more money stays within the community. Thus denying the outside community, the people we don't want to be dealing with, the very reason they're in business, which is money. And in the early stages, it doesn't matter that it's linked to a current currency. If the pound was to completely drop, it would depend on how self-sufficient that ring-fenced area was. But you could continue to trade on the same level if you could buy your goods and services from within. So it might mean that raw materials would start to be traded within there. So you might have a baker that sells bread, right, but he needs wheat to do that. So you might have a farmer that produces wheat who would trade within that ring-fenced community. So now you can buy raw materials to make your product to sell to the community. What you end up with is a currency that you're controlling, based on the idea of self-sufficiency, because the idea at the end of the day is to have all required goods and services available within the ring-fenced area. I will be interested to hear what you all have to say. I know there's many people that look to silver or crypto as an alternative currency. My problem with those are, crypto I see as merely another commodity which can be traded. You can make money and you can lose money. It's more like stocks and shares, but at the end of the day is still intrinsically linked to a monetary worth. And the same with silver and the same with gold, whereas it retains its value, which is what makes it attractive. That value that it retains is still linked to a monetary worth. The problem with both of those is they're expensive to buy. Whereas if I said to you, this lighter is worth £20, so we will trade in lighters. So you will buy this for £20 and you can trade that for £20 worth of goods and services. You can see that these are very, very cost effective. It doesn't have to be silver, it doesn't have to be crypto. The principle is still the same. It has a monetary worth. As with both of the others, it is linked back to something you understand. So you understand money. The next stage from this is to actually get out of the whole idea of monetary worth, which is very difficult for people to do. And I think I will cover this in a separate video. It is again based on self-sufficiency. And I'm not going to talk globally, so let's talk nationally. If a nation, let's take an island, a nice unit, is self-sufficient in food, energy and housing, so that that country can house its people, it produces enough food to feed its people, and it produces enough energy to ensure that business can continue and that people's lives can be lived to a relatively comfortable level. If it is self-sufficient in those areas, then you can quickly move to a point where you have a two-lane economy, which does include a basic income. Now, this universal basic income we've heard a lot about in the last 2 to 3 years, and the reason it's being spoken about and the reason a lot of people aren't happy with it is because of the people that are pushing the idea and what's at the back end of what they want to do. The reality is that a universal basic income is going to be a necessity moving forward because of technology, because of automation, which is going to put people into a position where they have much more leisure time, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, and aren't as productive, so therefore not earning. Now, the other way of saying it is, well, these things are going to happen and you're not going to receive a basic income. What you'll have to do is fend for yourself, which is very difficult to do if you're not in a position to earn money. The way it's being proposed at the moment is not good, because it's going to end up being the large corporations that fund the UBI in order that you can buy the goods and services that that corporation offers. And I've explained before how that situation is really untenable long term, because it's a circular loop of money which eventually will necessitate that actually you're the fly in the ointment, and that if you didn't need the UBI, they wouldn't have to produce the product. So if you weren't there, they could just keep the money themselves. That's worth thinking about. But there are other ways that UBI and a two-lane economy can work. And when I say a two-lane economy, I mean where you can move from a universal basic income into additional income back to UBI as many times and as often as you want to. And I think that's the way forward. I think it's a system that can promote and encourage work in the right areas. It will enable people to... Bloody flies, man. Or wasp, whatever it is. It's obviously in love with me. Get out of it, you little yellow bastard. That can encourage people to do additional work, to earn more money, so that they can better their lives, whilst at the same time allowing people to withdraw from that employment phase for maybe a month, 2 months, maybe a year, if they want more free time, where they would still be able to survive on a basic income and then move back into work in those areas that require people to be working when they decide to. And I'm going to do a second video about that system, about the 2-lane system, and the other things that you can bolt onto that, such as smaller market economies, community projects, because I think it's important. But what I wanted to cover today was how you can introduce an alternative currency. And I mean alternative because it's not really been tried. How it doesn't have to be silver, which is relatively expensive. It doesn't have to be crypto, which is a little bit shaky, to say the least. And where it's based on something that everybody understands. So it's based on the currency that's currently being used, but enables the wealth to be retained within a certain designated group or area, and how that can encourage people to deal within that area. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let's get a discussion started. The next video will be on phase 2, which is the 2-lane economy. The way forward for us, hopefully, if we ever get some power. Speak to you soon, you lot.